Hello, and welcome back to the Friday Vinyl Club, where every day feels like a Friday and every album tells a story. I'm Jamie, and each episode I invite a guest to bring along one special record, an album that didn't just play in their life, but helped shape it. This isn't about chart positions or critical reviews, it's about personal soundtracks, the records that stay with us long after the needle lifts. This episode, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Jeremy Ansell, New Zealand music broadcaster, archivist, storyteller, and a man whose work with Crowded House, Neil Finn and Split Enz has made him an essential voice in the world of Antipodean pop history. Jeremy has spent years curating, documenting and preserving the music and stories behind some of New Zealand's most influential artists, and that passion, depth of knowledge and warmth runs through everything he does. Amongst other things, he's currently overseeing the Private Universe, a dedicated fan club for Crowded House fans like myself and Ollie. Jeremy's Friday Vinyl Club pick is the Beatles' iconic White Album. Released in 1968, the White Album is sprawling, messy, brilliant, fractured, iconic. A double album that captures the Beatles at their most individually expressive and collectively chaotic. But before we dive into the record and Jeremy's relationship with it, let's rewind a little. Jeremy, welcome to the Friday Vinyl Club. How are you feeling today?
Great, Jamie. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you for taking time to do this. I must admit, I'm a little nervous. I'm in awe of everything that you've done around the Crowded House, Neil Finn and Split Enz arena over the years. You've been a fantastic custodian and a help to fans like me and Ollie. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be appreciated.
Jeremy, we can't have a conversation without touching on Neil Finn, Crowded House, Split Enz, which is where my world, I guess, starts to intersect with yours. It's a huge time in that world at this moment. Split Enz, Mental Notes, has just turned 50. Split Enz are touring, and Crowded House is still going strong, and I believe in the process of recording new stuff. How did you even end up in this world?
Mid-90s, I did a radio series for RNZ on the Beatles. It was a 5 or 6 part session looking at their songwriting and putting in interviews and just making a nice package. And the head of Radio New Zealand Music at the time said, well, I want to do a Split Enz series based on Mike Chun's book, Stranger Than Fiction. And do you want to help me with that? I said, oh, yes, please. That would be fun. And so we started gathering as many cassettes we could off the band members, and I started listening through to old demos and live tapes and things. And then that person at RNZ left the company and it became a solo project for me. And over a number of years, I sort of chipped away at it and finally released it as Enzology, which is a 10-part documentary series on Split Enz from the beginnings right up until 1984 when they disbanded. Neil liked this, and he liked how I'd really dug in and found interesting things in his tapes, and said, well, someday do you want to do that for Crowded House? Now, I wasn't as knowledgeable about Crowded House as I was about Split Enz at the time. So I didn't jump at the chance, but in 2005, I was told that Capitol Records was putting together a box set of Crowded House stuff, and did I want to be involved? And I said, well, okay, sure. And that's when I had to reacquaint myself with the earlier Crowded House albums. I loved Together Alone already, and I loved Woodface, but I didn't really know Temple Low Men, and I'd kind of let the debut Crowded House album sort of pass me by. So I got to know those, so that when I was listening to the cassettes, I could tell, what songs were what and what was an early version of what. But this kind of dragged on. Things got delayed. The band got back together again rather than being a former band. And we didn't actually release those deluxe editions until 2016. In the meantime, I was asked to be Neil's social media person. He didn't really have an online presence up until that time, so a website was built, and I started managing that, and I did and still do look after his Facebook and Instagram, and it's kind of built up. My responsibilities have been added to over the years. I now look after the Private Universe Club. I suppose it's a fan club of sorts, and I help with archival things, like there's a documentary being made on Crowded House at the moment, film documentary. I'm helping them find footage or tell them what bit of audio goes with that, or what this could be. And the Split Enz releases, I help them when they need it. Yeah, it's all come about really because of that Enzology series.
It's incredible the path that's kind of been laid out before you. Then it doesn't sound like you've chased after this, apart from the grabbing the chance of working with your colleague for the original Enzology podcast on the radio. Everything else seems to have just fallen really nicely for you.
It has. I've been very lucky, and people have been very nice to me. So I try and be nice back and do a good job. But yeah, after doing that Beatles series in the mid-90s, I did think, well, what do I do to follow this? And I thought, well, I should try and do the same thing with Split Enz. So the fact that it ended up actually happening, someone else had the same idea and then brought me in. That was very fortunate, because it led to all this.
Now, obviously, I'm on the other side of the world looking in at what's going on around Split Enz at the moment, but obviously the reissues are causing a little bit of hype, and the reunion Split Enz tour is exciting people, and there's also been a wonderful school project that's caught our hearts. Lackey Holt, who kindly gave us some time and talked to us on the podcast about his school project, reimagining mental notes with a new generation, getting the school kids involved in a creative and thoughtful way. What's it like over there in New Zealand with all this bubbling up? Is there a sense of excitement around it all?
There is. I think there's possibly more excitement in Australia at the moment, because they're doing an actual tour in Australia, whereas here it's one gig, which is how the whole thing kicked off. They were offered a gig at Electric Avenue in Christchurch, and then it kind of grew into a tour as well. At the time of recording this, we are a couple of weeks away from the Christchurch gig. I think if anything else gets announced, if they do decide to do a New Zealand tour, then yeah, there'll definitely be more excitement here. But I think it's the potential to be a very busy year for Crowded House and Split Enz.
Yeah, well, we're hoping that some of that bleeds across to the other side of the world. But you knew I was going to say that, but I won't put you on the spot. Don't worry.
Well, anything's possible. I mean, I know things are being talked about. Whether it actually happens or not, I don't know. But that would be nice if they can get to the UK or somewhere near there.
Well, fingers crossed. Just touching on Split Enz and I guess the kind of revival, if you like. How important is it for the work that you've done for Enzology and the work that like Lackey's doing with the kids, bringing this music that's like 50 years old to a new generation to keep the music going?
Well, we all like to share the music that we love, and of course the band, the people who create that music want to share it with as many people as possible. So yeah, it's all important to us to keep it a living thing. Wouldn't it be fantastic if Split Enz had a radio hit again? I mean, a radio hit. What is a radio hit? I mean, people are listening to radio and online these days. But if you had maybe a viral hit,
hit, TikTok.
Yeah,
that's
yes. Well, TikTok. That's the big thing, isn't it? You get something that's shared a lot on TikTok, and it revives the song. It's not a bad thing. It'd be great if that happened for Split Enz.
And it's done wonders for it did wonders for Don't Dream It's Over, didn't it? That's helped that get so many streams. I don't know how the streaming counting works, but I think it's had a substantial amount. And having, you know, newer artists like Dua Lipa bringing Neil on stage on his on her world tour when they got to
Yeah.
New Zealand, doing Don't Dream It's Over must have had a fantastic impact there for him.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, everybody in New Zealand knows that song. Even if they don't know what it is, they've heard it. And the same thing with a lot of Granite House and Split Enz songs. Many of them get sung in schools, Weather With You, and so on. So it, there is that. People are proud of both bands in this country. There's always this friendly rivalry with Australia over who can claim them as their own. Whereas really, I mean, Granite House is an international band rather than New Zealand, Australian. Everybody can claim them, really. But I think, yeah, there's great pride in the music that we've made, more so now than there used to be. There used to be what was known as cultural cringe, that our New Zealand music wasn't as good as what was made overseas, and we've got over that now. You know, we have the talent and the technology, and the channels now to share our music widely and be proud of it. And we're also very proud of what we've made in the past. So yeah, we're an isolated country, but we're as good as the rest of them, mate.
You certainly are. And New Zealand music certainly has my heart. And as I've brainwashed my boy, you've certainly got Ollie's heart as well. On this podcast, we like to go right back and start thinking about early music memories. Can you remember, you know, your earliest music memory, or, you know, what was playing in the parents' house?
I mean, my earliest memory of all, this is in the house we had up until the age of 2. And the records were sitting in a rack on top of the piano. The record player sat on the TV, and I just remember, you know, walking through the room and seeing my family waiting for me at the dinner table. I was always a record nut. Being able to put this record on and hear music or speech coming from the spinning disc fascinated me, and I was happy to sit there for ages. When I was about 3 or 4, Mum got so sick of me calling her to change the record over every 5 minutes if it was a 45, that she taught me to do it myself.
Wow.
So yeah, I've just always been into music, recorded music especially.
I mean, that's pretty early on, isn't it? 3 or 4 being taught how to flip the disc.
Yeah, and listening to radio as well. The radio was normally on in the mornings when Mum was getting lunches ready for my brothers. We'd have it on the local station 2ZB in Wellington, and so the pop hits of the early to mid 70s, when I hear them, they're really special to me because that's my childhood right there. And also there were music programs on TV, things like Happening. Sometimes I'd get to see them. I was often too young to stay up late to see some of these things, but it's possible that I saw Split Enz on their first appearance on New Faces. I was just thinking that this morning. I might have, but I wouldn't remember whether I had or not.
So what was in that collection of your mum and dad's, that iconic collection that you had your eye on since you were 2?
It was all Mum's, really. I have never seen Dad handle a record. He did have a couple of cassettes when he had a cassette player in his car, and then a couple of CDs. But no, he's got a couple of piano favorites, but he's never really been a huge music fan. So all the records in the collection up until I started getting my own were my mother's. And it was everything from Gilbert and Sullivan, which I didn't get into, to Glen Campbell, The Seekers, a lot of mainly easy listening stuff.
Did you have like any of the bigger acts around that sort of time?
The closest we got to the pop hits of the time would be James Last, the James Last Orchestra doing non-stop dancing hits, cover versions of songs. He belonged to the World Record Club, They'd have collections of sound-alikes or whatever. But I remember about 75, ABBA became big here in New Zealand and Australia. We did get the best of ABBA. It seems like every house had a copy of that. And I was thinking, oh wow, finally we've got something fresh. Then she said, well, I'm going to get a rock and roll record today. And I was thinking, oh, great, some new hits that I hear on the radio. And turned out to be this record called Magical Mystery Tour by the Beatles, who I'd never heard of. And I was a bit disappointed. I thought, well, that's not what I was expecting. But I became very familiar with that one. That was the first time I had heard of the band, and everything from Magical Mystery Tour right down to All You Need Is Love. Yeah, that became a regular listen for me. But why she got that one in particular, I don't know. Good choice, though.
Good choice, and stuck with you all these years.
Yeah.
And do you remember sort of transitioning from so your mum's record collection to starting to collect your own? Do you remember?
Yeah. Well, from about the age of 3, on my 3rd birthday, I remember my aunt gave me. Do you remember those Disneyland storybook, 7-inch records? I don't know if you had those, but those 33 RPM discs with like a 24-page booklet of illustrations and the text, so you could read along. And you'll know it's time to turn the page when Tinkerbell rings a little bell, like this.
All right.
Yeah. So we already had some of those. I had two older brothers, and they already had some of those records. But my aunt gave me 2 of them. So that was, I think, the first time that for a birthday or Christmas that I'd been given records. And from then on, that's all I wanted for birthday and Christmas, more records. And if I knew what I wanted, I could ask for particular ones. So the first LP I was given when I was 4 was a more sort of nursery rhymes. When I turned 6, I was a Glen Campbell fan. We'd heard Rhinestone Cowboy and Country Boy on the radio, and I thought, that's great, I want that, please. So, that's. I became a Glen Campbell fan before I was a fan of any other pop star, I think.
How long did that last, or does that still continue to this day?
Well, it didn't. No, it didn't last really. I think once the Beatles came along, I forgot that I'd written to the. Actually, no, I haven't forgotten that I wrote to the Glen Campbell fan club, because I got a letter back and I still got it.
Oh, bless.
I appreciate Glen Campbell, and I do still play those songs. In fact, I was playing that same record that I got when I was 6. I was playing that just last week, but I didn't really buy any more.
Right.
I was given some 45s recently, but I haven't bought anything.
Do you remember when you started moving more towards the Beatles type music?
Well, see, the second Beatles record that Mum got, in about 76, 77, was the rock and roll music compilation, and that did it. It was compilation of their more up-tempo songs, right from 63 through to 69, 70. And I thought, there's just such great singing, energetic playing, fantastic songs. It wasn't the best illustration on the cover, but at least I could see see what they looked like when they were younger, a little bit younger than the Magical Mystery Tour album. And one of the great things about it was it had an insert which showed all the Beatles albums that were currently available in New Zealand. And this included the original albums plus a whole lot of compilations. We got a weird mixture of stuff that was released in the UK, but also the American versions. Very strange, a lot of repetition. But I could see the covers, and they had a track list for all of them. And I was thinking, I wonder what that song sounds like. And that's an interesting title. And because it was a collection, a finite collection, I thought, well, one day I'll get to hear all of these. And it was another couple of years before I started, asking for my own copies of the original albums. Sometimes I get them on a cassette, sometimes LP, depending on what was available in the shop. Really didn't mind either way at the time. So, yeah, that was exciting. Sort of every birthday or Christmas getting another Beatles album or two and playing them to death.
What were the dynamics in the family like with two older brothers, music-wise? I'm in a similar situation to you. I have two older brothers. They were pretty protective about the music that they listened to. Both of them would lock their bedroom doors and they would play their records, and I would be listening through the walls. There was never an invite, and there was never a kind of like sharing of secrets, if you like, of hey Jamie, have you heard this? Have a listen, tell me what you think. We'd never had that relationship. How was it with you and your brothers?
We kind of kept to ourselves. We had separate bedrooms and things. Most of the time, it was an individual pursuit. Um, I got into the Beatles before my brother David, who was 3 years older than me. But around the time John Lennon died, he became, really quite into it and into Lennon's solo stuff. And it was something that we could share. But if one of us had a copy of the album, the other person wasn't really supposed to play it. We had to get our own copy. That seems a bit strange now. That we'd both have a copy of Imagine, or we'd both have a copy of the White Album. But on the whole, I don't think our tastes varied too extremely. The oldest brother, Mark, who's 6 years older than me, he liked the B-52s and not too many other things that I didn't get into as well. But I was the main music nut. I always had to be playing something, and I always had the stereo up louder than anybody else. And I was the one who had the record player in his room.
So New Zealand growing up, obviously you've got the radio and the hits. Your mum's got that World Record Club, and I guess there's some local shops. But other than big artists like the Beatles, was there a thriving music scene in New Zealand? And were you getting influences from other areas of the world?
There, in the 70s, it wasn't particularly thriving. On TV, the music shows, we would play videos, early videos or film clips, because a lot of the artists wouldn't come over here to tour. So you got to see music like that way. And yeah, the New Zealand music wasn't given a lot of airtime right up until the late 90s, really early 2000s. It was quite poor. We did have a good alternative scene, particularly in the 80s onwards, with the Flying Nun label, which started about 81, Propeller and things. Bands like Toy Love and Blam Blam Blam, they're all featuring people like Chris Knox and Don McGlashan, who are well revered now. But if you weren't going out to the pubs and seeing these bands, the only real exposure you'd have to them would be on the Sunday night music video program called Radio with Pictures.
Okay.
And that did play alternative clips and New Zealand music. That's where you'd go and see the latest Iggy Pop video or Stiff Little Fingers or Chris Knox's latest film or but generally on the commercial stations, no, there wasn't much New Zealand music.
Okay. So you're getting glimpses of what was going on, but it sounds like once a week being beamed in from the rest of the world.
There was also Ready to Roll, which played on a Friday night and then moved to Saturday, which was a half-hour music video show which showed the pop releases. Now we probably saw more music videos than you guys did. Certainly more than the States did. I mean, I know you had Top of the Pops. Top of the Pops was more live or mimed performances. You didn't see so many music videos, but we saw a lot of music videos.
So obviously growing up, listening to music, there's an evolution where we kind of step outside the house and we start going into that live arena and going to gigs. Do you remember your first proper gig?
Yeah, well, apart from the orchestral things, I went to a couple of those when I was a kid, but the first proper gig I went to was David Bowie on the Serious Moonlight Tour,
Wow.
1983. I remember reading in the paper earlier in the year, around the time that Let's Dance came out, that he was coming, and tickets were $18.50, which seemed extraordinarily expensive at the time for a 13-year-old. Yeah, my mother ordered those for my brother and I. And I must say I've got a younger sister as well. I haven't mentioned her yet, but so there are 4 of us kids. But yeah, she ordered the tickets for David and me, and I had to pay her back. And I thought, well, how am I going to do that? I don't have much pocket money, but I was out in town one day, and $20 note floated past my feet. And I thought, that's paid for my ticket. Fantastic.
Wow.
Strange the funny things you remember. But yeah, that was, we went to see that concert, and that sounded amazing. Just the most incredible sound system. But there was a howling southerly. I mean, Wellington is famous for its wind and for its cold southerlies. And in this part of the world, a southerly is the cold one, not the northerly. It comes from Antarctica. So I remember being quite chilly in the stands. We'd started sort of down on the field. This was an athletic park, which was usually used for rugby matches. But with all the people sitting on shoulders, I couldn't really see. So we went further back, way back, a little too far back, really. But it sounded good. Couldn't see much, but it sounded great.
So that was an amazing introduction to the live experience, or at least hearing Bowie.
Yeah.
As you got older then, did that sort of become a habit, a routine? Were you going out often around New Zealand, seeing live bands?
I wouldn't say I went out often. I mean, I usually went to see the big name acts who would come over. I mean, I saw Elton John for my second concert in '84, stupidly standing right by the speakers at the loudest concert ever at Phillip Park. So that's probably why I've got hearing trouble now. And all the usual big name artists. I probably didn't see many New Zealand acts. I wasn't so much into New Zealand stuff at the time. And I didn't go out to pubs. I was never really into drinking. I'm more into staying at home, listening to records than I was going out and seeing performances. I'm trying to think if anything really stood out. I mean, one of the most enjoyable concerts was seeing The Cure in 1992. It hadn't occurred to me that they'd be such a fun band. But I guess because we all knew the songs and we're all singing along, and being near the front of the stage, that always helped. That was at the Wellington Town Hall. Saw McCartney in 1993, managed to get near the front. That was fun. When Peter Gabriel came in '94, only went to Auckland, so flew up to Auckland. I lived in Wellington. I flew up to Auckland for it. He played in a very stripped back version of his show, so it didn't have all the props and stage gear. But so that was quite an intimate show. That was, I think we lucked out there.
For somebody who's not technically going to so many gigs, you've seen some incredible artists.
Well, I've always regretted not going to see Jeff Buckley. I was a Jeff Buckley fan the moment Grace came out. I saw the music video for Grace on TV, and I thought that's incredible. Bought the CD and loved it. And he came to Auckland, and I ummed and erred about going up to see him, and I was basically too lazy to organise accommodation and flights and things, and I thought, well, I'll go and see him next time. Next time he'll be a bigger artist and he'll come to Wellington as well. But within a year or two he died, which is very sad. So I can't say I got to see him, but I was an early fan, so I'll hang on to that.
You mentioned you'd seen Paul McCartney. Where did you see Paul?
That was on the New World Tour in 1993 at what's it called? Western Springs in Auckland, which now I live very close to, but at the time it was halfway down the other end of the country. That was a good show.
I saw him in 2004. He played Glastonbury on the Pyramid stage. I've only been to Glastonbury twice and got absolutely soaked both times.
Yeah.
But 2004 was a fantastic lineup, and he headlined. I think it was a Saturday night, and it was an incredible experience. But that's the only time that I've seen any of the Beatles. Did you see any of the others?
Well, I saw Paul McCartney again the last time he toured here, which was a few years ago, and I got to take the family that time, which is great because my kids have heard a lot of the Beatles in their time, thanks to me, and but they've survived, and they enjoyed the concert. I saw Ringo. Ringo came here on his All-Star tour, so Jenny and I went to see that. That was fun. I tried to see George in 1992. I was in London at the time that he did his benefit show for the Liberal Party or wherever they were, but no, I couldn't get any tickets to that. And I think that's about it.
Are the kids infected with the Beatles? Have you managed to transplant that down the generations?
Oh, they appreciate them. I don't think they've wanted to own any of the stuff. Well, my daughter would be happy if I gave her a Beatles record, but no, my son Ben is very much into gaming music. He's training to be a software engineer, specializing on gaming this year. My daughter's a big drum and bass fan, but she loves the classics as well, the classic pop and rock songs. Jenny and I, my partner Jenny and I, we're both Wilco fans, and she prefers things with loud guitars.
It sounds like you've maybe half succeeded.
Well, yeah. I mean, my niece Rose, she became a big Beatles fan actually, and started buying first the CDs. Now I think she's replacing those with the vinyl. So yeah, actually, yeah, she's the one who picked up the Beatles bug in a big way. And another niece on Jenny's side of the family, Lily, she also became a Beatles nut. So whenever she comes around here, we break out the whatever box set I've recently bought and or book and things. So and in fact, everybody in that family, they're all Beatles fans. My nephew Thomas recorded an album last year. Very very good songs actually, but they're quite Beatlesque. A couple of the songs, very McCartney-ish bass playing, and it does run in the family.
That's good to know, and I guess that takes us nicely onto the album that you've chosen today. The Beatles' White Album, one of the most talked about, picked apart, baffling, brilliant double albums ever created. Now, full transparency, I love the Beatles, but I'm not a diehard fan of the Beatles. So this White Album, for me, is one of those records that every time I listen to it, I'm hearing something new, and I feel like I'm still discovering it when I return to it. So where do you begin with this? What's your connection to this album? Why have you brought it to Friday Vinyl Club?
Well, it's my favorite album of all time. I don't remember the last time I played it all the way through, probably some years ago. But from the moment I bought it when I was 10 years old, and I saw it on the shelves in the local record shop, having already been familiar with it from that discography insert that I mentioned before, $14.99 on the double LP. I thought I've got to have that. I think I've got the money. Took it home. I still remember the first time I played it, side one, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the best side of all of them. Just magical songs, and also different from each other. It's a very diverse album, and you think okay, it's just a white cover, a bit boring, okay, but the music's great. But then I opened it up, and there was the photographs on the side, and the separate photographs, and the poster, and all the collage. It's a wonderful package.
Yeah.
So while perusing all these fabulous songs were flowing past, and and being a double, there's a lot to take in. It just seemed like incredible value for money, and it never got old.
There certainly is a lot to take in, isn't there? There's so many tracks on here. When you played it that first time, you picked it up for $14.99. What grabbed you first when you played it? Was it the rawness, the variety? Did the experimentation come through at that stage to you, or is that something that has evolved over time as you've listened to it?
It's all of that. All of that. I mean, it was very different from the other albums, the other albums I'd heard. I mean, by that time I had A Hard Day's Night, Magical Mystery Tour, and other compilations. So I'd already heard Helter Skelter and Back in the USSR, and Oblida. But there are all these other things that just fitted in so well. Yeah, from music hall to quiet acoustic ballads to, I mean, Revolution 9. I know a lot of people hate Revolution 9, but for me as a sound nut, it was, and still is, really inspirational. I mean, they could have chopped it up, a couple of minutes off it, and I'd be quite happy. But it's as a collage, it's brilliant. I think I've tried to make things similar to that in the past, and haven't been able to get something that hangs together as well as that. But you just can't get past the songs and the choice of the arrangements, the choice of instrumentation, and the singing. I mean, this is the thing about the Beatles. Somebody asked me, years ago, why is it do you think they've lasted? What is it that made them special? And it isn't just any one thing. It's the fact that you've got, if you're including Ringo, you've got 4 singers in there. So you could go from Paul McCartney singing one moment to John Lennon the next one, and then George the next. So you don't get bored. And the melodies are fascinating. The rhythm playing is great. I mean, I know it could be seen to be a bit, oh, here's somebody picking a Beatles album again as their favourite album, but I'd be lying to myself if I didn't. I mean, I picked for your Instagram series, I did pick Brian Eno, because that's an important album to me as well, Another Green World. But when it comes to my all-time favourite, I can't deny it's the White Album.
I think the way you've just described that is really interesting, because during my research for this, I read that people often describe the White Album as feeling like 4 solo records sharing a postcode. Does that ring true to your ears?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, most of the time they played, well, with the exception of things like Why Don't We Do It on the Road, which is pretty much all McCartney. Most of the time they played on each other's songs. So there's still Beatle tracks. But yeah, I can see what people mean. I don't think I've ever tried compiling the songs, all Paul McCartney songs and then all Lennon songs and seeing what that sounds like. What I did read the other day, there's that whole thing of people trying to revise the track list and getting it down to a single album. And I've never got that to work. For a moment there, I thought, oh, somebody's got it right. That actually could almost work. But then I realized they'd picked 20 songs, which is cheating, because you can't comfortably fit that many. Oh, actually, could you? This is a double album. I think they might have. No, I'm second guessing myself now. Cut that bit out.
It's fine, no problem.
Or leave it in.
No, I might leave it in, yeah, because
whatever
that's
works.
the point of this podcast, This when I listen to it, it feels, and again, I'm not a diehard Beatles fan, so people might scream if they hear this, but it feels for the Beatles unusually open and unpolished.
Yeah.
Do you think an album like this, if a band released something like this today, would it have such an impact that the Beatles seem to have had with this?
It probably wouldn't have as big an impact because they're not the Beatles. I mean, the Beatles were such a big name in 68, 69, as they still are. But I think a band of that style, if they released an album like this today, it'd be hard to get the coverage. It'd be hard to get it noticed as widely. I mean, I'd love it if somebody did. I'm always on the lookout for something that's going to grab me. And actually, in the last year, I look at, I keep a little playlist for myself on Apple Music of songs that I've taken a shining to, and I haven't added much in the last year at all. But if there were a rock pop band that could have songs that are arresting as the Beatles, for me, and done with that sort of, as you say, raw production. I'd be delighted. Maybe that's another reason why I prefer the White Album to Abbey Road. I mean, Abbey Road has some great songs, but I haven't warmed to it as much as I have the White Album. Maybe because it's too polished, perhaps. Maybe not as quirky as the White Album. I mean, I was into comedy records at the same time. The same year I got the White Album, I got a compilation of the BBC comedy greats, the Two Ronnies, Morecambe and Wise, The Goons. Always was a good big Goons fan. In fact, the first album I ever bought with my own money was Spike Milligan's Bad Jelly the Witch, which is a classic recording in New Zealand because it was played on Sunday morning children's radio a lot. It's not as well known in the UK. So, yeah, as a 10-year-old, the White Album had these comic elements as well. I mean, just a song called Piggies with pig sound effects in it. Bungalow Bill. I don't think it's. I think it's supposed to have a little bit. It's supposed to be comical to a degree. Yeah, I mean, they were all Goons fans as well. So if you listen to My Name, Look Up the Number, which I know isn't on that album, but it's from around that period. That's very Goonsish.
Let's do a bit of a deep dive. Are there any songs that have grown on you over time? And maybe are there any songs that at the beginning you were absolutely enthralled with, but over time maybe less so now? Maybe repeated listening hasn't helped?
Well, that is, actually, repeated listening. I can go through phases, particularly when the Beatles are bringing out a box set. I can go through phases where I'm listening to a lot of Beatles, and then I'll go for a long time thinking, well, I've been listening to that for 50 years. It's nothing fresh about it anymore. So I think as a whole that happens. Any particular songs on the White Album? Yeah, well, I mean, perhaps they don't have the same magic for me as they used to, particularly the well-known ones. While My Guitar Gently Weeps, fantastic song. I wouldn't want to play that too often. But songs like Happiness is a Warm Gun, I think that is still fresh to me. Something like Long, 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 perhaps might not have been that enthralled with back then. I appreciate that more now, I think. It's quite a quiet, dirgy song, but maybe because I didn't pay it so much attention before, I'm not as sick of it now.
Where do you sit on Helter Skelter?
Helter Skelter I love.
Yeah. Absolutely adore that. That's in my top 10, probably my top 5 Beatles tracks.
Yeah. There's so much energy in that. It's so different from everything else they were doing and everything else anybody else was doing, really. And hearing on the Beatles Deluxe Edition that came out in 2018, the other take, it was fantastic to hear another take of that. People are always saying, "Oh, why don't you release the 20-minute version?" Well, the 20-minute version is of the slow, earlier recording. That's a real dirge. There's sort of like 12 minutes on the box set. You wouldn't want 20 minutes of that. But the fast, energetic playing, I think it's got is it McCartney on guitar and John Lennon on bass, I think. I might have that round the wrong way. But it's just love it. Both the mono and the stereo versions, they've both got aspects of them which are fantastic. So I was going through my listing in my mind the other day how many copies of the White Album I've got, because I know some people like to collect multiple editions of things, and normally I don't. But it just happens over time that I've collected about 7 or 8 copies of the White Album in different formats. That was never the intention.
That's still a good haul.
Well, there was the vinyl that I bought when I was 10, and then in 88 I bought the CD, which was really expensive at the time. Double CDs were about $44.99 in New Zealand money back then, which is way over $100 in today's money. Which I guess is actually how much LPs cost now. Bought the original mono when I was in England in '92, and then just different remasters and and deluxe editions and things. It's excessive now when I look at it, but hey, if you can't do that for your favourite album.
When you listen to Vinyl Benji's Sgt. Pepper's album and you get to the point where he tells you he's got 18 copies, vinyl variants of Sgt. Pepper's, I think you've still got some way to go, Jeremy, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't think I'll get to that extent.
There's a song on here that I didn't actually grow to love as a Beatles track. I grew to love from a Crowded House cover from one of the live CDs. I think it may have been a fan club CD, but it's Rocky Raccoon.
Right, yeah.
So my introduction to that was Neil Finn and Crowded House. What are your thoughts on that track? Because I prefer the Crowded House version to the Beatles version. That's going to really upset people.
Well, yeah, you normally prefer the version that you hear first, the one that you got to love the first time. So I mean, I'll listen to both of them, but for me, it's the Beatles version, the original released version. Of course, there've been outtakes released since then. It's a fine song. It's not a favourite of mine, but I don't dislike it.
Why do you think this album still resonates with you all these years later? Is it that sort of feeling when you bought it for $14.99 and it's steeped in nostalgia, or is it something else?
I think it's a part of all these things. It's definitely nostalgia, just because I remember that day, buying it and loving it immediately. Just all the song, I spent the money and suddenly had 2 discs of 30 songs, 30 more than I had before. That was a major moment, and with the poster and everything, and just loving it for so long. I mean, it doesn't mean as much to me now. I mean, as I said, I haven't played it in full for a little while. But if you were to ask me, well, what else would your number one album be? I couldn't think of anything else that would beat it. I have many favourite records, but if I had to pick a number one, it would still be that one for just because of what it is and what it has meant to me.
It's etched inside your memories.
Yeah.
If you were recommending an album to somebody listening to the Beatles for the first time, would you give them the White Album to start with, or would you direct them elsewhere?
That's tricky. I think it might depend on what songs they knew and what songs they were attracted to. My niece, one of my nieces, who still is into the Beatles, she loved the early stuff, and as you know, there's a big difference between the early years and the later years. Some people prefer one or the other, and don't necessarily like both. I think it would depend on what sort of songs they enjoyed, because especially if you were to buy an album, it's not cheap buying records these days. They can just stream it, try things out.
Yeah, they play around with things nowadays, can't they? Cool kids swiping left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can't talk about this album without touching back on the cover art. You touched on it earlier when you saw it in the shop. Obviously, you were familiar with it from previous time. What was your first reaction to the Playmite cover?
I'm trying to remember what it looked like on the discography inventory sheet that was in the Rock and Roll Music album. It probably wouldn't have just been white. It might have had the Beatles sort of written over the top of it. But opening it up, I mean, obviously I knew what it looked like on the outside already, but opening it up, I wasn't aware that they would have these inserts, the 4 photographs and the poster and the lyrics. That was fascinating to go through and look at all the photographs and think, well, what era was that from, or who is that, and why is John sitting naked on the bed, and who's that person with him? Because I didn't know anything about Yoko at the time. That was fascinating. I think I put those things on my wall for a while. I didn't realize until I got the album that the Beatles was embossed. That was a nice touch. The Beatles' name on the cover. Being a late 70s reissue, it wasn't numbered, so it doesn't have the numbers on it. Not my original copy anyway.
I mean, it was a bit of a shift from Sergeant Pepper's, though, wasn't it? They'd gone psychedelic. You've got that vibrant Sergeant Pepper cover from the album before. What do you think sort of played into their thought process to go from something so vibrant to something so bland's not the word, is it? But something so
a complete contrast, a complete switcheroo. Well, I mean, given we've mentioned that the songs on the album are so different from each other, this record cover was completely different from the one that preceded it. So I think it was a brilliant idea. I mean, for me, when I was 10, I hadn't actually seen the Sgt. Pepper cover, not the full thing. I think I must have seen I'd seen a small stamp-sized picture of the cover art, but I didn't own that record yet, and I think I might have borrowed the cassette from the library, which had just a quarter of the cover on it. So yeah, I don't think it seemed such a contrast to me at the time. But yeah, for those fans in '68, it would have been quite unexpected, disappointing at first until they opened it up and discovered everything inside it.
Do you think the sparseness of the cover would change how you listen to the album? So you obviously were maybe a bit more familiar with the songs, but if you were new to it and you were just seeing that, would it help or hinder a first listen is where I think I'm going to.
It's an interesting question. Absolutely, the cover art can affect how you listen to something. I mean, I don't think of the White Album without thinking of the cover. I wonder how many people actually call it the Beatles. I mean, it's called the Beatles, but you never anybody call it the Beatles because that's confusing. A lot of the music is stark. Some of it is bare bones, just like the cover art. But at the same time, a lot of it is very dense. The whole album's open to an interpretation. It's a blank slate. They could try anything they wanted, and they did.
Yeah, maybe that's a good way of describing it. A blank slate. So
yeah, start again. It's for Lennon, it was maybe strip everything back, keep everything as raw as possible, and maybe for all of them really, because it certainly doesn't have as many of the effects and overdubbing as Sgt. Pepper. It's not as fluty tooty, if you want to put it that way. Although there are a lot of overdubs on it. They're more sort of rock and roll rather than orchestral.
I guess overall, looking at it, because it's so stark and blank, and I've got my copy here, and I've got mine's embossed.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel dated. It does look timeless. It's only when you open it up and you've got the late 60s haircuts, moustaches, and big collars on the photographs that you would place it in a certain time and space. Does that timelessness element sneak through to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Good point. Yeah, a lot of it is timeless. Especially when you got bands making similar music. I mean, it's held up really, really well. Some tracks more than others, but it doesn't have an 80s gated snare drum or DX7 keyboard bass sound. It's not smothered in early 60s echo chamber reverb. It's really well recorded, really well arranged, and yeah, as you say, it's timeless. I hadn't really thought about that before. It's really held up well. No wonder it's my favourite album.
No wonder, and it's a time capsule for you as well from a memory perspective, and that's come through on this part of the conversation. Jeremy, we always close the Friday Vinyl Club podcast with a Friday spin, a recommendation that is dominating your headphones or speakers at the moment. Could be old, new, rediscovered. Have you got something for our listeners, Jeremy?
Well, I went record shopping the other week for the first time in a while. I like to to go to Real Groove again, go through their $10 bins. And a lot of those are imports from the States, not in the best condition, but it's a fantastic way to get something cheap that I might not have thought about checking out. And just a few weeks ago, I stumbled across on an Apple playlist the Isley Brothers. You might know the Isley Brothers. Well, you might know their songs like Shout. They did the version of Twist and Shout that the Beatles were influenced by. So they were, 60s, 70s, possibly still even going, but they were, biggest in the 60s and 70s as a soul funk band. And I was lucky enough to find a number of their records, but I bought two of them. And one's an LP called It's Your Thing, which has fantastic song in it by the same name, It's Your Thing. And another album from the same year, 1969, The Brothers Isley. And I recommend both of those highly. That's something I didn't get into as a kid so much, was the soul and funk side of things. I heard a lot of disco on the radio, but that was around the time that in the late 70s that disco became uncool for whatever stupid reasons. So I'm catching up. I've been catching up in recent years, trying to discover, the best, to me, what feels like the best soul and funk, and I can't recommend these records highly enough.
Yeah, I know a few Isley Brothers songs, and we touched on music of the Beatles being timeless. I think this probably has a date on it, really, when we listen to this type of music, but it doesn't make it any less.
Yeah, it's very much of its time, but it's all the cooler for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us on Friday Vinyl Club. It's been wonderful diving into the world of Beatles, exploring your experiences working with Neil Finn, Split Enz, Crowded House. How do you find that? Was that okay?
It's been wonderful to talk with you. Thank you very much for letting me waffle on.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. To our listeners, I'll put some of Jeremy's work, and I'll also put some of the songs we talked about in our Friday Vinyl Club Spotify playlist. You can reach us at any time on Instagram at JamieB1973, or you can email us at thefridayvinylclub@hotmail.com. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it, follow the show, or leave a rating. It really helps more people find us and helps us grow. Until next time, this has been the Friday Vinyl Club. Keep your records spinning and your stories alive. Thanks very much, Jeremy. Speak to you soon.
Thank you, Jamie.